Four college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Sobchak-Bankard, and I'm here with three kids who are really good at running. I just can't seem to beat them. First, he'd like his Oscar delivered to him via Messenger Falcon. It's PT McGinn. How's it going, PT?
I'm told there's concern about attacks from both the opera and ballet communities. You're just mad you left out jazz. I'm doing great, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great, too. I was hoping someone would pick that one. Or at least have some reference to ballet and opera. So well done. And he decided to grow a mustache, and everyone's talking about it. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
I'm tired, and I want to go home. This show is very long, and there's no pizza.
No.
I'm good, Jen. I'm great. I'm so excited to be here to talk about the show and whatever it is we're talking about tonight.
I mean, that was like unnecessarily cryptic, but okay. And last but not least, look out for passive-aggressive notes he'll pass to you about how well you're aging. It's Antonio Elefano. How are you doing, Antonio?
John Penn couldn't be here this evening or didn't want to. So I'll be attending this podcast on his behalf.
Excellent. Honestly, I don't know what we'd do if he showed up. So I'm relieved. All right, dear listeners, those were all references to the 98th Academy Awards, which aired live on ABC and Hulu last night. So we are recording this on Monday, March 16th. And so the Oscars are fresh in our minds. We just watched them last night. We are here to share our reactions to the show, talk about the implications of the night's winners, and close out a great Oscar season and year in movies, if I do say so myself. But first, PT, if listeners think we're going to show up for them after listening to this episode, what can they do?
If they enjoy our final human responses to the Academy Awards next year, it's just going to be four Waymos in tuxes, then they should follow us wherever they get their podcasts. We host the show on Jen's Substack, thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, many more. Again, like wherever you're listening right now, you can find us there. You can also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. You can also find us on Letterboxd. You can follow the account at LTRpod, or you can search for the hashtag LTRpod to see what each of us individually has been watching, including the fact that I did do another dip into one battle after another in the time since the ceremony ended to remind myself how happy I was that it won, which spoilers for our later conversation. Jen.
Thanks, BT. So I just want to start with what we thought about the ceremony as a show that was broadcast on, as Conan very pointedly said, on network television. And so young people weren't going to watch it. This is the last Oscars that will be on ABC. Next year, it's going to be on YouTube. So no?
No, I think
That's
it's
not right.
2026.
I think they have through 100, and then it goes to YouTube.
So all the YouTube jokes were just kind of like in anticipation of, well, that's misleading.
The announcement was recent, so they stuck with that. But yeah,
sure,
we have time to adjust.
Okay.
Time to subscribe to YouTube TV, or otherwise we can't watch it.
YouTube TV is insanely expensive. So
apparently you will be able to watch it on free YouTube, even in America, but it will have like ads. Which I think that YouTube TV won't. So I think that's what they ended up clarifying, but it'll be different. We'll be in a different world.
Yeah, I guess I'll say save your free trial until then, because YouTube TV, if you pay for it, is like $89 a month. It is a cable package. It's cable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what did everyone think about the show as a show?
So I had the pleasure of watching it with Jen at Jen's house, and there were a number of times when I looked at Jen and I said something that I would never say during the Oscars, which was like, I think this is pretty well thought out, right? Like, I thought it was pretty. I thought that there are certain things, for example, like having presenters present each Best Picture nominee. I feel like a few years ago, they'd be like, here are two celebrities and they're going to do a little thing and then they're going to play the clips. And that's good in theory, especially if they're actors from the movie, but it takes time. And especially with 10 nominees, it takes a lot of time. And so there were moments throughout the show where they introduced, or like Sinners, it was just like a clip show. And then they just showed Sinners. And then I think it led into maybe that dance performance from Sinners, right? Led into the song, and this incredible, dance interpretation. And I thought, that was the moment where I was just like, this was thoughtfully crafted. And just like with anything, there was some jokes are going to land, some jokes aren't going to land. But overall, I felt like it moved at a pretty good clip, especially the first half. The Oscars aren't the Grammys. I don't know if you all watch the Grammys, but the Grammys, I feel like the Grammys also last 3.5 hours, but they present 3 awards, right, in the course of the night. And it's just like, here's a montage of performances, and that's great. And that's what people are there, to watch. But the Oscars just don't skip awards, right? They tried to a couple years back and people freaked out, as they should have. Given how many trophies they give out, I was surprised at how seamlessly it sort of, unspooled. I was rarely bored during the ceremony. And my mom, who watched it yesterday, I just talked to her and she was like, I wasn't bored. And that's a huge victory, right? If you can get both of those sections of the Elefanos to agree on an Oscar ceremony, I think that's a winner. So for me, I thought it was a great ceremony. What about you all?
It sounds like it was great that they made Conan host for life in the final segment. I don't know if you guys saw the end part, but
we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately was not able to join at the party that Jen hosted, though I had planned to and wanted to, but it did not work out. So I was watching it at home, and I am in basic agreement of that. I think there were two things that to immediately jump into here are my nitpicks. But I think there were two things. One is a standard issue complaint at the Oscars and really any award ceremony, which is the presenter banter was not super successful most of the time. And we up to whether we want to get into it too deeply or not. It was I feel like the good recipe is there's three or four lines total between two people, or one or two jokes for one person, and then let's go. We can move on. And some of them went longer than that. And I think related to that, or feeding into that, was something that I was I couldn't put I couldn't identify myself. I won't try to claim I did, but I did see afterwards there were some people online more technically minded that were there was microphone problems of who was mic'd at any given time, and also how the crowd was mic'd. So you weren't really getting as much laughter from the crowd unless it was really strong laughter. So it felt like a lot of jokes from the presenters, but even from Conan, where I was cackling, and then I was doesn't sound like it's going over in the room, but it seems like the people who were there were saying, no, it was pretty well received. No one really was quiet at any of those moments. So I felt there were definite times where that came to the forefront. Melissa McCarthy in the Bridesmaids thing was basically indecipherable. And when Barbra Streisand came out, I was like, oh gosh, I guess Barbara's older. It's she can't really project it all. She's so quiet. And she got a different microphone to sing. It's nope. Barbra Streisand has no problem projecting. That was a microphone issue or a mix issue because the piano was playing over her. So those were, I think, some speed bumps that held it back. But otherwise, I agree with Antonio. I think Conan is great. I think Conan made it even more Conan-y this time, which I definitely appreciated. He, leaned even more towards moments of absurdity and the absurd kind of jokes he'd have in his monologue, because the world is even crazier than last year when he hosted. And I think that worked well. And I think things moved pretty well, maybe too well sometimes because of the cutting off speeches issue, which is a third thing that we can discuss maybe around the awards. But I think especially the way they were just we lost a lot of people. Let's just take 15 minutes for the in memoriam and really experience this and let it be and not rush through it, not try to distract you with a dancer or a main musician that's going to do something. I think it was, as Antonio said, really well thought out, and I appreciated that and I like that. Greg, what did you think?
I hated it. No, I had a great time. So dear listener, if you've been faithful to us, you know that my ritual is my very good friend Ben is a member at the Brattle Theater, a historic independent theater here in technically in Cambridge, but in the Boston area. We don't know this for sure, but I feel like the chances are like 100% Conan has watched a movie in the Brattle because he lived down the street at Harvard. So I feel like, I'm taking it. So I watched the show in a theater where the host had once watched a movie. And I had a great time. It was a really fun night. So they project the award show, and then this year there's a different local movie theater that does a monthly trivia night, and they had those trivia hosts come do trivia during the commercials, and it was a ton of fun. They did a lot of tough questions, but solid questions, and just kind of kept us all entertained. I had a giant bucket of popcorn with real butter on it that just made my night so much better to be doing that. I did have a adult beverage, and as I sat down, my really wonderful cardigan dipped directly into the beer in the cup holder. So that was a little rough start, but I recovered. So I thought it was a great show, and this I give all that context because then I'm in a theater full of Bostonians watching local boy Conan O'Brien do well. So clearly we were all really into his performance. If I'm being completely honest, I think maybe last year was a little stronger from him. I thought some of the jokes hit a little better last year, and but that doesn't mean I was disappointed. I thought he took only a couple real kind of twists of the knife, and they landed really well and were well deserved. And my favorite being when he called out Sarandos and said this is the first time he's ever been in a theater, and then went on to do a Conan James Bond villain impression of like they have to be at home alone where I can monetize it. And I like it. I mean I think that worked really well. So because of the format I watch it in, they bring the sound down for the trivia, and then they bring the sound up quickly. They actually have somebody backstage at the theater that just makes sure that we don't miss any of the show. They cut off whatever bits have been going on stage for the trivia. And so I actually didn't clock that there were so many audio problems. I thought it was just the nature of being in the theater. And then tonight I was showing my wife and son a few of the better moments, and I was like, oh yeah, I pulled up the bridesmaids reunion, and I was like, this sounds terrible. Like I didn't even clock it last night. But I think I will say I don't disagree with PT that some of those kind of patter bits fell short. I really liked a few of them this year, though. I thought Anna Wintour and Anne Hathaway was hilarious. Yes, synergy. I should be cynical. Disney's just selling me tickets, and oh gosh, they were available I think that morning to pre-order. But like that's fine. I thought Kumail's shortening of the titles was very funny. And the bridesmaids, the whole thing worked for me. They're just all these little throwaways. I mean, Maya Rudolph being like, I was thinking this morning as I was sitting counting my money. It's like, what is happening? So I liked a lot of those bits. The standouts wiped away the kind of awkward ones. Still not sure I needed more Adrian Brody, but I think he just will continue to sell me TurboTax until the end of tax season at least. So I left the night satisfied. Part of the kind of production of the show is also just like I think I came in dead last of the four of us, but every award I got wrong, I was like, heck yeah, that's a great winner. I'm happy about that. So, Jen, if I'm not mistaken, you did best in our Oscar poll. Does that mean you liked the show in general, or you are just sitting on your laurels? Resting on your laurels. You don't sit on laurels. You rest on them.
I did very little resting all of yesterday. Honestly, I was overly ambitious with the menu that I was making. I made an entire Yule log cake, complete with chocolate bark shavings on the outside. So, and then I have, if anyone wants to sidebar me about melted chocolate, I have a lot to say that I learned in the last 48 hours to make Marty's Supreme ping pong balls. Anyway.
Which ended up being irrelevant for the entire ceremony.
Oh, I know, right? Well, there was a ping pong bit
True.
that Conan had, right?
Early, yes, in the opening. Very true.
Yeah, the bum drum thing. I like how I'm the one who's saying that out of all four of us.
Well, I think we were thinking of the opening where he scored a point off Marty.
No.
As on Gladys, and then I'd blocked the bum
You
drum
forgotten
until
about
you
the-
said
Yeah.
those words. So that's what my reaction was.
But no, in general, I really enjoyed the show. So to echo sort of what Antonio said, I think they managed to achieve surprising levels of depth that I think other past productions, in trying to save time, has just kind of like skimmed the surface in a way that's not very satisfying. So in particular, I think taking the time with the two musical performances that were much more expanded. Yes, I understand most people think it's rude that they only chose two performances out of all the best song nominees. We can get into it later. But I turned to Antonio and I was like, see, this is what they can do if they're not obligated to have 5 different performances. We can have 2 really good ones that are much more in-depth and actually like recreating scenes from the movie in a way that I really enjoyed. So there was that. And then the In Memoriam actually felt like, instead of like an obligatory, oh, here's something happening on to distract you while we show you images of people who have passed away, like they actually had people who were close to the people who passed away, especially the huge icons that we lost this year. And it just felt a lot more meaningful to me than versions in the past that we've seen. I do agree with Greg that like Conan was better last year, but I think it was because he had more to do. This year, it seemed like he really front loaded a lot of his material, which was excellent. I cackled the whole way through the opening bit with the weapons, and I'm like, and like the slow realization of like, oh wait, they're gonna he's gonna go run through a bunch of movies, like no notes for that part. But I do think that like because of that, and the In Memoriam had to be a lot longer probably than it normally is, thoughtfulness and depth aside, I think just because of the sheer number of people that they needed to honor, it was going to be a little bit longer. So because of that, I think he kind of disappeared and didn't have that much to do for a while, which I missed him when he was gone. You know what I mean? So I think in general, like I think a lot of people will interpret that as, oh, he was not as strong as last year, but I think we just didn't actually spend as much time with him this year that compared to last year. But yeah, overall, I approved. I approved. I enjoyed the show. I had a good time. I think the only bit that really didn't work for me was the Robert Downey Jr. Chris Evans.
Oof.
It was
capper
rough.
on that was okay with Channing Tatum, but it didn't
Channing
salvage
Tatum
the
saved
whole
it.
thing.
Like,
Yeah.
he was the only saving grace. Like when he's like, I'm gonna need that back later, bro. Like it's like, I'm like, okay, that was funny. Everything else that happened was not very funny. So that seemed like a wasted opportunity, and especially since they hyped up, we're gonna have an Avengers reunion, right? Like that it just it was kind of disappointing.
I didn't know they hyped
Yeah,
it.
You didn't know that was a
wasn't
thing?
worth hype.
Yeah. Whereas, like, I know you feel differently about the Mandalorian and Grogu promo, but Grogu sitting next to Kate Hudson in the audience, I ate it up. Antonio could attest. I was just like, this is making me so happy.
To me, it was once Grogu popped up, it was great. The build up took too long, and I think it was again audio combined with timing, where it was sort of like aliens and Pedro Pascal being like, you know about aliens, like referring to the movie franchise Alien, and then instead it's but we're gonna go, and I think it just took too long to get to like, and Grogu's here. It's like, just get to Grogu, just bring Grogu out like as soon as you guys hit the stage, and it would have been fine, and I think everyone would have understood what was happening. I also like mildly, like unfairly disappointed slightly in the one interaction between Conan and Matt Berry, the announcer, partially because I found Matt Berry almost impossible to hear whenever he was saying something. And because of that, I kept thinking he was saying things that were funny. And then it took me like halfway through to be like, oh no, he's just saying the basic information, but pronouncing words the way Matt Berry pronounces words. And that's fun. But like, okay, that's fine. And then when they had him actually talk to Conan, it like wasn't a very good bit, and it didn't seem to really go anywhere. And that was just one of the things I was thinking of when they were retracting microphones from people who were giving speeches. It's like, you could have cut that. And you could have cut Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans down to just like one little exchange. You could have cut that thing, and everyone could have had their extra 4 minutes to finish their speeches. But minor complaints.
I want to ask the two that watched it on broadcast TV, because I left my movie theater. It ended at like my time 10:40, which means there's like an awkward 20 minutes until local news on this coast, which that's always the concern. Is, it's going to push the local news. What did they do with that 20 minutes? Like
they played some TV show I didn't recognize.
Ugh.
I think is what happened.
So
I was
just
like,
I agree with PT. Why rush it at all if you're going to end up with like an awkward
Yeah.
amount of time where you put on something syndicated? So just let it breathe.
I mean, they
Well, I
started
believe-
an hour early, right? Like an hour earlier than normally?
right, well, they did that last year too.
Right. But then it was like they still wanted to be like they wanted to be 3 hours, but then they budgeted it to be 3.5, and it was like 3 hours and 40 minutes. And I think they get stressed about that for ad reasons or affiliate reasons.
I think ABC gives them a discount if they can get it under a certain amount of time. I don't know. I don't quote me on that, I guess, but I have heard that there's some kind of financial incentive that it's like the airtime is not as expensive for them if they can keep it under a certain time. And I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's I think that's why they're fighting against the clock more than anything. But again, none of this will be a problem on YouTube.
Yeah, let's go to YouTube.
Yeah.
If it's a video.
I guess, wait, should we share? Because Greg mentioned earlier, but I didn't want to get into it because I'm like, if I get going about prediction stuff, like I'm never going to stop talking. But do we want to share what everybody's score was and kind of how you felt like you did in terms of your predictions, what panned out, what didn't?
So I want to hear from everybody what your total was and the pick you're proudest of. Like, did you take a swing that worked out? Or did you just do chalk and looked at your robot websites and then just followed the poly markets? Beep, boop, boop, Gen 2, D2? Or what?
I got to say, this is probably my best year in terms of predictions. Not necessarily because of the score itself, but because I finally... So in the past, I've been used listening to everybody else's and researching everybody else's picks as kind of a crutch. I'm a very good listener. I like doing research. And so it always made sense to be like, well, let me just like aggregate what everyone else is picking and then decide for myself in response. Like, oh, most people are picking this. Let me also pick that. But this was the first year where there were a couple categories where I decidedly zagged against the grain in terms of, and in one of those it worked out. So I'd say my best swing probably was documentary feature because I went with Mr. Nobody against Putin. And why is Greg shaking his head? Because you didn't like that movie.
Greg,
a movie.
Greg just came off of every time I got a pick wrong. I felt awesome about it. It's just remembering the one.
One exception. Yeah. Go on though.
So that had won the BAFTA, but basically every other pundit or outlet had The Perfect Neighbor, except for Mike, and Oscar. I believe they also had Mr. Nobody against Putin. I actually didn't know that until today when they were bragging about it. I'm like, oh, good. I'm glad you also can share in the glory of this pick. But I was like, well, Mr. Nobody against Putin won the BAFTA, and Perfect Neighbor hasn't actually won that much. And using my contextual knowledge built up over time, I was like, the documentary branch typically does not like documentaries where the footage is just strung together, where it's all found footage. Like there was a nominee that from a few years ago that everyone was like, this is so good, but I don't think it's going to make it, or like it's not going to, the documentary branch is not going to accept it because it is just like a bunch of found footage strung together. And so I'm like, I think that means that it's not going to win, and despite the Netflix factor, and and it panned out. So I was really happy about that.
Once we're at this stage, doesn't everyone in the Academy vote for all the awards? So does it matter if I'm asking this not to be confrontational, but like, is the assumption that the documentary branch, because
is the most voters probably
watch those,
yeah,
so therefore they're more likely to be a larger percentage than any other group.
Yeah, and the thinking was like, in some categories, could the new rule about like you have to be honest, did you watch all of these? That would kind of affect. There was a lot of speculation going into this year because this is the first year where they had that rule. It's the first year, like a lot of speculation was like, well, is that going to change the votes? Like if only people who have actually seen all of these are voting and they're not going on the rumors or vibes or people they know or whatever, right? Like, is that going to change who actually wins? And so that was kind of my thinking, where I was like, well, for documentary feature, like, yes, everyone's probably watched The Perfect Neighbor because it's on Netflix, but if they haven't completed the whole category, like, and it's only the people, it's likely only the other documentary branch members who are going to be. So I think that was part of my calculation. It was like, I think it's going to lean more traditional documentary branch, like stuffy, and plus it was the BAFTA. I'm like, it won BAFTA. Like, so in general, my predictions were like, well, when in doubt, pick what BAFTA picked. again, someone listening to this who knows more than me is probably like, you're getting it all wrong. But sorry about that. So sorry about that.
That's what the comments are for, everybody.
Yeah.
Please leave a comment to correct it. But okay, sorry to interrupt, Jen. What was your other prediction that you felt good
the other
about?
one I was really happy about that I zagged. Everyone had Butterfly for animated short. We on the show, if you go back and listen to our predictions episode, we were saying, Greg because he'd seen, well, actually, no, that was one I watched too. We were both like, stop motion animation. That seems like the clear favorite. And we were right. So those are my two gloats. The other one is, I guess like Friend of Dorothy for live action short. I was like, there was a tie and neither of the winners.
No, just salt in the wound that yours at least came in third.
Yeah. It was
a
rough.
four-way tie. Everything but Friend of Dorothy is a winner.
I think I would have only been mad if it was the Jane Austen period drama there. So, yeah.
I had heard so many people actively dislike that one. I'm like, that's too polarizing. I can't win. But anyway, so my score was 20 out of 24. I tied with Sean Fennessy of The Big Picture, Matt Neglia of Next Best Picture, among other pundits. So I was like really happy about that. Not to brag, but I am.
Yeah, I mean, to brag. That you're
I formed my own opinions and I did better than I normally do. So
you're breaking away from the AI.
Yeah, critical thinking is a lot.
Coming alive. You're a real girl.
Critical thinking
Come
is
with me
alive
if you
and
want to
well.
win your Oscar pool. I had 18. I wouldn't say I didn't have a big zag. I mean, Michael B. Jordan was the biggest zag but that was just really up in the air. And I don't think that by the time, obviously, even leading into the ceremony, that wasn't a big deal. Every time I tried to go somewhere different, I missed. So, which was really, I think, just Friend of Dorothy, which was no longer the favorite. That had faded away. And then Tiana Taylor was no longer the favorite, but I stuck with that. Please see our predictions episode if you want to listen to predictions. And if we're interested after we go through everyone's, but also if we want to move on, that's fine. I did do a breakdown of our collected predictions from that episode to see what our score would have been on the ballot. So
what would it have been? What was it?
Yeah.
I'm going to wait until we hear from all of you guys.
All right. Well, I had 18, but I also didn't have any zags that feel like I went out on a limb and I got it. Jen and I, we had our little games within the game, right? Because we were like, well, what do you think they're going to start with? Sometimes they start with screenplay. And Jen, of course, was right that they were going to start with one of the supporting actors, right? Because I feel like in some of the more recent ones, they push supporting actor a little bit later, just feeling like, people will hang on. They can wait for whatever. But when they started off with Best Supporting Actress, I was like, okay, here we go. And then, so before it was announced, so I had Tiana Taylor as well, who I really loved and thought would ultimately win. It just felt like the kind of Oscar supporting actress. But as she was naming the names, I was like, I really would like Amy Madigan to win. Like, there are all these reasons why I think that it probably isn't going to happen, and that I already mentioned during our prediction show. But like, wouldn't it be wonderful for her to win? So it put everything, like my ballot was already like, from the get-go, but it's worth it. It's okay when the wonderful Amy Madigan gets to go up there and give a speech and gets to be really thrilled. I mean, Tiana Taylor would have given a great speech too, I'm sure, but like, that felt nice. So if you're going to lose, then that's a good way to go. Greg, how about you? What are you most proud of?
So I, like you, I stuck with Tiana Taylor, and I think we also both stuck with Chalamet. My thinking, at least, was that Chalamet's, the controversy happened after voting was closed. But I think probably the Michael B. Jordan speech at the Actors Award is the moment Timothy Chalamet lost, right? Like, because Michael B. Jordan rose to the moment in such a great way. So that is definitely what was on my mind. So that means, I'm like, please don't give it to Sean Penn. That was my hope dicting of the night. So I stuck with Stellan on that. So I only went for one. I got one of the 4 acting races, the one that was really obvious. So that's a real black mark on me. And part of how I only came up with 17 was there. But I did think Sinners was showing strength, so I took two big swings. One was wrong, which is I'm like, we can't love Frankenstein this much. Let's give Ruth Carter another, because she's so beloved and is an icon. Yes, she's won before, but I thought maybe that would be part of the Sinners boat lift, or Sinners tide lifting all boats. But the one I'm proudest of is I took Autumn Durald Arkapaw, and I recall in the prediction show I said this is who should win, and you both were like, nope, beep boop, beep boop. The precedents say burp burp. So you did not agree with me, and you said cinematography is absolutely going to one battle after another. So I took a standing ovation. I stood and I waved to the crowd and I bowed, and most people are saying, what's that weird guy doing? But I was very proud that I took her. And I think it was also one of the better moments of the night. And so, I think it's pretty famous at this point, but she gave a fantastic interview on Big Picture, kind of about her craft and her artistry, and it's really a great listen. So that's the one I'm proudest of. I did go 2 out of 3 in the shorts, which is better than I usually do in those. So that maybe makes it worth having sat through all of those. See the previous episode where I described the experience. So I not certainly I think I did much better last year, but I'm pretty happy, overall, because all 3 of those, well, no, I'm not sorry. 2 of the 3, sorry, Mr. Penn, to know he wasn't going to be there and to know he already has 2. What are we doing? Like, he doesn't need it. Like,
again, I did just rewatch them. He's so good. He's so good in that movie.
He's very good.
I still would have voted for Benicio over him, and I might have voted for Stellan and Delroy over him too. But like, it's so good. Like, it's such a good performance. It's like it's a very worthy win. And Greg, I mean, apparently Sean Penn's in Ukraine trying to help Zelensky this week do something. I don't know, but apparently that's what he told the New York Times, was he was going to fly to Ukraine instead of going to the Oscars. And you may not have heard that when you were standing up in a theater and speaking over the first Black Filipino woman to win cinematography, to tell everyone in the theater how you had just made a good pick in your pool.
Listen, this is about a white man. This is my victory right now.
As a white man, it's very important. Okay, so for those of you who don't recall or have not listened to our predictions episode, the way we did it was we sort of Jen randomly, I think, assigned, although there was some shuffling to get categories where only Greg had seen things for Greg to lead it. But we each took turns leading categories and saying sort of individually, but for the collective, who we thought would win and then who we thought should win. So under that formula, our collective group got 18 right as well. Which is pretty good, I think. So there were 6 that we missed. For 3 of those 6, the should win that we had is what actually won. So to Greg's point, cinematography was one of them. Supporting actress was also one of them, to Antonio's point, because we had said Amy Madigan, but that we thought Tiana Taylor would win. So that was great. And then animated short, which was the crying Girl Who Cried Pearls. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
And that was Greg was leading that because, again, he had watched all of them. So he said that's the one that should win, but he didn't think it would because the favorite was Butterfly. And then the 3 that we got wrong and wasn't our should win were casting, which was a big surprise. We'll talk about documentary
I think everyone
feature.
was surprised about that.
Yes, documentary feature. Greg already mentioned because he watched all the documentaries and did not like the one that won. And then sort of an asterisk on this was actor, where we had a will win, should win, both going to Timothée Chalamet. But in the conversation, half of us did say, but we actually think Michael B. Jordan will win and maybe should win. So like, it's not on the books that way, but I do want to note we were beginning the hedge or carrying forward that hedge. So pretty good individually and collectively, I think, with our fearless leader, Jen, of course, at the front of the pack. So good job on the Zags and the predictions.
Thank you. And I think like,
End of the episode. Good night.
What I mean, I think to segue into talking about the actual winners and kind of what we think it all means and why it happened and stuff like that. But I think the interesting thing is that considering 3 out of the 4 acting categories were kind of a coin toss or like a shrug sort of prediction for a lot of people, where they're like, we have no idea. Like, there isn't enough data to really push this in one direction or another. That overall, like, it was a fairly predictable year with a couple of key upsets. But I feel like if you, and I think my apologies or condolences go out to Hasib, like, if you were planning on a huge Sinners upset in terms of overall, like leading up to a Best Picture upset against One Battle, I think that's probably where a lot of your misses were going to be happening, right? Because I think consistently, Antonio and I, when we were watching together, kept being like, if this category goes to Sinners, then it's game on, and then it didn't, and and so we never got that kind of early stage. Oh, wait, the tides have shifted. Maybe this is going to lead to Sinners doing like a more of a sweep. So, PT, remind us what was the One Battle Sinners breakdown in terms of wins? Like, how many wins did each one get?
When we were looking at it, we had it 7-3. Which,
so very One Battle skewed.
It was very One Battle skewed. It ended up being 6-4. And that's because, well, it's casting and cinematography switched. And One Battle didn't win supporting actress, but neither did Sinners, because it went to Amy Madigan in Weapons. And Michael B. Jordan won, and we had Marty Supreme winning one award in our predictions. So yeah, it was closer. And I think when we got to the end, I forget if it's on the recording or if it was only when we were talking afterwards, where it was like, like, for all of our talk that these two movies are like equally strong, we did end up with like basically another Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Everything Everywhere, All Quiet on the Western Front style split of like one movie dominating and another movie giving a good try, like to get a few awards. So yeah, it was a little bit closer. Let me ask, I mean, to Greg as well, but to the two of you who were saying you were talking about this, when a Sinners won cinematography, was there like, maybe it's not a sweep, but is it a late breaking shift? And now suddenly there could be a pivot to Sinners, because that was a surprise. Like, that was not expected by any of us except Greg, who believes in women and listens to women, and speaks over them in theaters,
and then takes their credit. Yeah.
Yes, and takes make sure to take credit for doing so. Yeah, I don't know. Was there any hint of that, or were you sort of like, no, like this, cool, good, but like that's just sort of, that's it?
Well, casting had already gone to One Battle at that point.
Casting
right?
was early.
Yeah, so I think
pre-editing,
because of that, I didn't really read into Autumn Durald Arkhipov winning too much. But I do want to talk about because as Greg mentioned earlier on our predictions episode, we had said that because One Battle had won the precursor, the Guild Award, the American Society of Cinematographers, that it was kind of a case closed. And so what do you think accounted for her win there? Is it because of was she a beneficiary of what pundits were calling the Sinners vibe shift, sort of after SAG, like how the energy, the momentum they sort of picked up, was she a beneficiary of that? And that's why she won? Was it that people got wind of her campaign because she was doing I think she was campaigning really well? Or was it the historic win that people were attracted to? So how would you account for that upset in particular? Because I don't account it as, I didn't see it at the time as like, oh, things are changing. Maybe Sinners is going to win a bunch and do Best Picture.
I mean, in the moment, like what it got to be was like, oh, Michael B. Jordan could definitely do this. Like, that was sort of my thinking. And then that was also, I know, I'm sure it's riveting for listeners to hear about our text thread. But we were texting during the show, and there was a window where I was like, we need to be prepped for if Frankenstein wins more than Sinners. Because for a while it looked like Sinners might only get original screenplay and score. And that was before score was even awarded. God forbid, it didn't take score. But then it was, so then the cinematography happened. Then I was like, okay, now they have 3, like the fourth seems like it could make sense without necessarily feeling like it would challenge for One Battle. I mean, it's probably foolish to try to think that there was some sort of narrative forming in the collective mind of whatever thousands of people vote in the Academy. I do wonder if it is just a combination of people were feeling like, you know what, like I can vote for Sinners in things, and like this would be great, like because this, like it's crazy a woman hasn't won this. Like why wouldn't we vote for her? Like she's just as strong, and also maybe some degree of spreading the wealth where it's like, I mean, there were enough people who voted for One Battle in casting that maybe were like, I was going to vote for Sinners in casting, but hey, what if I vote for Sinners in cinematography and then switch my casting to One Battle and then vote for One Battle up top? Again, I don't know how that sort of methodical everybody is, and you can't, that's individuals, you can't extrapolate out to the collective. But I think it's some combination of those things. I mean, it's also Sinners and One Battle were two excellent movies. They both looked really good. Like, I don't think any of us would have been mad about One Battle winning cinematography, or were worried about it being like some devastating mistake. But like, this was really cool, and Sinners deserve that. And so maybe that's all it was enough people thinking that and then casting their votes accordingly. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it was the campaign. How often do you hear from cinematographers? And by the show, we knew of her and saw her rising profile. And I'd also give Kugler credit. He was really good about shouting out different collaborators at his speeches all season, and she was one of them. And so I think I think it was just smart. I do think any of the other winners are potentially there. My seatmate was like, it's got to be Train Dreams. That looked so beautiful. I think Anthony's there too, guest of the show, and Train Dreams would have been a great cinematography win as well. But I think, I think there's nothing wrong with the kind of campaign where you're out there celebrating your own art and achievement and just kind of owning your excellence. And I think she did it very well.
Yeah, I agree. I'll also add that I'm not going to pretend like I totally understand what cinematography is, but but while it's true that Train Dreams is really beautiful, right? I if like the best scene of the year, I think for most people was the dance scene from Sinners. This is so much that they recreated it in the show. If part of what that is cinematography, right? Then like you have the difference between something that's like really beautiful and really stately and like all the things that we think about cinema, and something that's really kinetic and really just like that like instrumental to like what elevates the movie, and just flashy too, right? That just feels awesome, right? And so so I don't know, that when I thought One Battle too, just because like I went with what was predicted, because again, I don't understand. So I'm just going to assume that the Cinematography Guild understands this better, and then I'll just go with what they do. But like, at the end of the day, separate apart from like the historic part of it, which obviously made everyone feel good. When I thought back to like what are the images and what are the moments from just like sitting in a movie theater and really just like absorbing this form, what's going to stick with me, it's going to be that. And so I think it's also a meritorious win. Jen, what do you think?
So when I think of cinematography, I always think of lighting and how the camera's moving. And so I think that lines up with what you're saying in terms of that big "I lied to you" sequence. It's not just it's everything working in harmony, obviously, but it's not just the fact that the scene exists. It is the way that the camera is moving through that scene that is so magical, right? Like the idea that it's like kind of there, that the camera is like almost like a person at the juke joint, kind of wandering through all of these like ancestral musical forms. And so I think that's a big thing. And then I think one thing that people were sort of skeptical of was that there were rumblings of voters. And again, don't take stock, don't fall for the anonymous ballot nonsense. Please, just don't do it. Don't read them. They will only make you sad and angry, and then unduly make you predict Penelope Cruz for Best Actress, and then have you lose at the I'm still not over it. Still not over it. The stain on my record. But there were rumblings that critics were sort of saying when they were talking to voters, that a lot of them said that they thought that the lighting in Sinners was too dark. and that was like why they were voting for one battle for cinematography instead. And obviously, that turned out to not really be true, or not true for enough people for it to matter. But that was,
they know
again,
it takes place at
thing.
night, right? Like it's with vampires.
Like,
the sun's down.
It's probably because they were watching it at home and they don't have the correct settings on their TV. Common problem for home viewing. Anyway,
love the idea of cinematographers being like, I don't know how to adjust the picture. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with brightness or tint.
Well, wouldn't at this point? Well, now we're back to the who gets to vote in each category. But I assume it's more than cinematographers that get to vote.
Yes,
on.
My understanding, and I don't think it's necessarily right. I would defer to your knowledge. Ed, is that once we get to this point, every category is voted on by everybody, with this new kind of caveat of you have to
have seen everything,
affirm that you've seen everything. And
or lie.
The only thing I looked at the only thing I saw in the anonymous ballots that I looked at, I looked in the Sun a couple times. I looked at the Trap, and what I saw was no one was paying attention to that in the anonymous ballots. They were just like, yeah, I only saw 3 of these movies, and I just said I saw all of them so I could vote for the person I thought would win, so I could say I voted for the winner, which sucks. But that's, again, only the people who want to share and get picked out of the ones who did share. So yeah, I think everyone votes. So you're right. Yes, it's not just cinematographers, but if it was winning, if one battle was winning the Cinematographer Guild Awards, those are cinematographers, and it was winning because of the darkness issue, then I don't know. That seems weird.
So to move away from this category, because I think we've talked about it enough, like, what do you feel like is the story that these winners tell? Like, what's the overall narrative? What's the headline of this collective 24 categories and winners?
I think it's a spread the wealth year, right? Like, when I think about this, I'm going to remember PTA getting up at the end of the night and listing the 5 Best Picture nominees from 1975 to, I think he kind of stumbled in his explanation of doing that, but the implication was clear to say, like, this is that kind of year. And I think the narrative across the night was to largely share that. Of course, we're talking about these 2 that stood out, but there was still a lot of representation and some snubs. But, I think the fact that, the range of winners is so broad, I think that speaks to that this was a good movie year. And that's part of what we've been saying all year. So when I look at this list of winners, that's what I see. That to me helps explain Amy Madigan, because it's like, we want to honor weapons and what weapons is doing. Where the industry is in this perilous moment, we need everybody to be on board, and we need to celebrate horror movies and animated movies, and not just the Pixar animated movies, but ones that feature characters that maybe don't look like everybody's children, or and are faces we've never seen before, and so on. So I see a lot of that, and I thought the ceremony also reflected that. Like, I really loved we won't talk about the award more maybe, but the casting award, I love when they had the 5 people come out and explain and connect with them. I mean, that structure always works. I was surprised there was only 1, because I think they'd said they were going to try to do 2 or 3 of those a year, but it was a great way to introduce this new award and to develop it. And I think that was a great chance to see Wagner Moura on stage that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And Gwyneth Paltrow, right? I mean, she's a crazy famous person, and it's nice that she got a moment there to share some thoughts about the process as well. So that's what I see when I look at my full ballot of check marks and X's, is that it was meant to kind of recognize a lot of these really good films.
To go off of what Greg just said too, with Amy Madigan and Sinners, that the genre bias isn't as prevalent now. Because I think, like, last year, Demi Moore almost took home Best Actress for a horror movie, but didn't. And like, there are examples in the past, like, if you count Silence of the Lambs as a horror-y movie, I don't know, like, maybe, but like Amy Madigan, that's a horror movie, right? Yeah. Michael B. Jordan, like, these are things that, as recently as like 5 years ago, I think that there are Academy members who would have like put up their nose at something like this, but it's not anymore, right? Like, it's both that I think the voters are embrace these genres more, and also that artists have elevated these genres in ways that, in just like really unexpected, really incredible ways. So I think it's really refreshing to see, and I think it will. I mean, I don't know. Every year, there's hope that like this will convince people to like watch the Oscars more. I'm not sure. I will say my 10-year-old watched the entire ceremony from beginning to end, and he had a great time. Right, like when we left Jen's house, you know, he was like, "I really like that. I want to watch that again. I want to watch those movies." And I was like, "Well, hold on there, wait a couple years." But I'm glad that. But he had a good time watching them, and he had a good time. I mean, mostly because of our wonderful host Jen, but also he really enjoyed. He was very happy that Avatar, one of the few movies that he actually saw. When that won, my youngest really enjoyed the performance of Golden, as did all the kids, I think. But yeah, the embrace of genre felt nice and kind of new. What do you think, PT?
I love everything that both of you said, and especially hearing that story. I was trying to think. I was like, he could maybe handle Frankenstein, but I don't know if he would embrace it. Whatever. But yeah, in terms of history, we were talking in the predictions episode, and by we I mostly mean me. But to fuel predictions, try to look at like what was the stuff from the past that sort of makes the most sense. And so let me throw this at you as an attempt to sort of summarize in a sort of bigger picture narrative of things. So we had an Oscar ceremony, which ended up with sort of two, like a 1A, 1B, two-headed monster of most prominent movies leading the way from the same studio, duking it out throughout the campaign season to see which one will take home the big prizes. Both of them from beloved auteurs who were thought of as very worthy. They're like, these are leaders of their generation. Neither have been rewarded yet, and they're due. But one of them's a little older and more veteran, so maybe is more overdue. And it ends up with the movie directed by the overdue filmmaker. Wins picture, director, supporting actor, adapted screenplay. Ends up with 2 more Oscars than its main rival, but that rival still wins big awards like actor and cinematography. There's also 2 other movies that take home multiple awards. A genre movie that picks up 3 below the line wins in technical categories, and a movie about singing in a non-English language that picks up 2 prominent awards. Both of the 2 movies become long-standing classics that like are just sort of like, yeah, they're in the pantheon. These are wonderful. And the whole year, as Greg was saying, is thought of as like, wow, what a great year, which is a bunch of different movies. I'm, of course, talking about the year 2007. It's No Country for Old Men from the Coen brothers. There Will Be Blood from Paul Thomas Anderson, plus The Bourne Ultimatum and La Vie en Rose. And a whole bunch of other great movies. Michael Clayton gets one supporting actress win. Ratatouille is in there. Atonement once, all win awards. That feels like this year. That feels like that's what we have here, is just like one of those years that when we're looking back in a decade, and it's like, what are the best movie years of both Oscar movie years and just movie years in general of like the century so far? I think like with maybe, 2007, with 2017, with maybe 2019, we're going to have 2025 like in the discussion with One Battle and Sinners up in the top 2. So to me, that's what it ended up with, where it sort of is like, oh, there's obviously one movie took the prizes, like the most wins, and took the big like picture and director, but not sort of like, not really at the expense of, and while there were partisans out there, and I don't know the degree to which you all were seeing real negative things being said about One Battle After Another online, once it was winning, which was out there, which was happening. But for the most part, I mean, I also remember there being people who were really mad There Will Be Blood didn't win, and, being like, what's that? I mean, No Country's fine, but like, Cohen should have won in the past. Like, why are we not awarding this movie now? And then over time, it doesn't matter. It's just like these 2 movies are great and are the sort of leading figures of this wonderful movie year that worked really well. And I think the Oscars got that pretty right, like for me in the end, in terms of the outlay of awards and how the ceremony was so focused on people I think this is the year where there were the most number of times a winner got up there. It was like, let me talk about the other nominees for a bit, or at least reference them and mention them and thank them and share it with them. And that sort of collaboration, maybe that's a sense of protection, or we must work together because the industry is so precarious. But it also just felt really magnanimous and collaborative, which was lovely. Jen, what did you think?
So I think that I think the thing we need to keep in mind as we look back, as we get further out from Sunday and kind of look back on this, is that just because one battle won Best Picture in the end and won more Oscars in the end doesn't mean that it was not still a close race between the two. I think this is what's going to get lost in the sauce in terms of like people retrospectively talking about this year in movies, because I think what you were just saying about the sort of spread the wealth meant like it was more spread the wealth than we thought, and it was like just a great movie year, and isn't that amazing? I think people are gonna wrongly remember this as, oh, we just didn't realize it was one battle all along, which is what happened last year with Anora. And I don't think that the comparison is apt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like it. I think it is more of a like you're saying, like a two-headed monster. Or I was like, how do I two-headed creature? Like, let's go with Guillermo del Toro's language. No one's a monster here. Then it would have been, because, and I heard this kind of in the punditry, especially in the last 2 weeks too, of people kept talking about this, the phrase that got used by many people across many podcasts was the Sinner's vibe shift, and the idea that like, oh, all these journalists have been in the room with everybody, and they were kind of comparing it to Coda, Everything Everywhere All at Once, or like or Parasite, these movies that kind of surged at the last moment and didn't come out of nowhere necessarily, but came out of nowhere as a Best Picture frontrunner. And in terms of their dominance or winning Best Picture or whatever. And I do feel like, no, it was actually Sinners and One Battle the whole time. Just that One Battle pulled a little bit ahead because of what you're saying in terms of like, well, like Paul Thomas Anderson was overdue, Ryan Coogler, very deserving, but people I think are confident that he can win one later, or he can win all the Best Director and Best Picture. You know what I mean? Like that there's more to come from him potentially. So that's my 2 cents. Is like, it was still a close race. This was a 2 front runner year the whole time. Let's not forget that. I think just because the people who are like Sinner's going to sweep and like totally overtake One Battle, just because that didn't happen doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't close.
It does feel possible that like God forbid, because I think this was too long between nominations and the ceremony. I understand, I guess it was Olympics based because everyone got out of the way of that, and then the televised precursors, et cetera, et cetera. So, but like if we somehow had another month, I wouldn't be surprised it would have ended up with Sinners like winning more, just because more time might have gone to that momentum and getting there. So I think that's fair. I the only thing I would not question, but I would ponder about is it that they were going back and forth the whole time, or was it that One Battle started with a really huge lead and Sinners almost caught them and didn't, but almost did. But maybe in the end, I think it doesn't really matter, because like, again, I did a bunch of looking into 2007 when I made all my notes about that thing I just said, but I don't recall, and I didn't find anything that said, was one of them the leader longer and the default, and the other one was challenging, or did they go back and forth? So, that's part of the hype cycle. That's maybe one of those things where it's like, we as people who are like pundit adjacent and fanatical followers of this are probably tuned into that in a way that the voters who actually make the decisions, most of them aren't, because most of them are like working on a set somewhere, and they take a couple weeks to be like, I guess let me look at these, and then look at them and vote, and they don't think about what the narrative shifts have been per se, more just what they are hearing when they actually pay attention to it.
So I have a corollary question I want to give Jen first crack at, and then hear everybody's opinions on, which is, I think, even with this, how close was it narrative, I everything you both just said, I think does capture the feelings in this, but I think it was preordained that this was going to be PTA's night, right? Like, I think he he was absolutely going to win director. He was probably going to win picture. He was absolutely going to win screenplay. And when somebody gets that kind of destiny, I always ask, like, like he can lie to himself and say, I don't know if it's going to happen, but he had to rise to the occasion. And so my question is, do you think that as the night of finally rewarding PTA came around, do you think this felt like a just celebration? And did his speeches live up to it? What is insane to me is that, like, we've had, like, just last year, Sean Baker actually outperformed this, which, what, Sean Baker is more awarded than PTA. I mean, I get it. PTA just needs to take an editing credit, and he could have gotten there. But like, do you think this felt like this kind of culmination of his career, Jen? And do you think he delivered at being the kind of spokesman for Hollywood across the season, or last night in particular?
I think mostly yes. I think that because I feel like I had honestly been a little underwhelmed by some of his speeches leading up to the Oscars. And I was secretly hoping that he was kind of like saving it for last, right? To the point where I was neurotically being like, asking Antonio, like, do you think he's going to be giving the Best Picture speech? Like, or is that going to be the producer? Like, is this it? Like, when he was doing Best Director, like, how am I going to view this speech as I'm listening to it? Like, is this going to be his big moment, or are we saving it for later? And I think that, I think what I've learned from this award season is that Paul Thomas Anderson, not the most oratory person. He's a writer at heart, right? And I think that his approach largely has been to either let the work speak for itself and not interpret it for everybody, and kind of talk about what its significance is, or like say that out loud, but more focus on the people he's working with, particularly Adam Sumner, right, who they lost during the production of One Battle. And that his speeches have often just focused on that, right? But in his Best Director speech, he specifically said that he made this movie for his kids and for the housekeeping mess that we are leaving their generation, right? And as like kind of an apology, but also a hopeful message that hopefully they can turn it around. And that's perfectly sums up what the movie is, right? So I think in that moment, it was very satisfying to be like, oh, he finally just said it. He just finally told us what we've all been thinking the whole time, and putting words to it in a way that I think he hadn't previously. And so in that, but I think you have to kind of put it in the context of him. He's not the kind of director who's going to get up there and like quote a bunch of other people. Like, he's not going to quote James Baldwin like Joachim Trier did. He's not going to be like, take the moment as a platform. He just doesn't seem that kind of filmmaker. And so I think in the context of all of that, and having managed my expectations throughout award season, I was very happy with his Best Director speech because of that one part where he sort of talked about, oh yeah, and this is what the movie means to me. This is why I made it. So yeah, in general, I think it was still a good capstone for him, a good moment. And I think that like everyone was really happy with him winning, right? But at the same time, and I know you didn't really ask about this, but I'm going to add it anyway. It's crazy because even though all of that, and it's sort of like, PTA, we're finally honoring you, right? And he did say something like, you guys really make people work for this. Like, I've been doing this a long time, which I thought was hilarious. But I think even though this is PTA's moment and his sort of like, you did it, kind of, you made it, you got your Oscars, it still felt like a coronation of Ryan Coogler in a big way. Because I think so many people, when they got up on the stage to accept their award, talked about how wonderful it was to work with him and how he kind of lifts everybody he works with up. People referred to him as like a generational storyteller. He was like, and his presence at the show, I think, was so felt and so prominent. Like the camera couldn't stop cutting to him to show whatever he was doing. Right. And so I think it's interesting because I think, yes, it is a kind of like peak PTA moment, but at the same time, it really did feel like you're in the club now, Ryan Coogler moment too.
Great. Just to go off of that, I remember early on in the season, because both of these movies came out. I mean, when did One Battle come out? Sinners was April, right? Okay, so but still pretty early-ish in the season. And I remember at an episode, I guess around September or October, when we were talking about Oscar prospects, we were like, well, wouldn't it be amazing if like these two movies were our screenplay winners, right? Like, wouldn't it be incredible if just that? And so for that to have like borne out, right? And for no actual Oscar villain to have like emerged to supplant them, I think is really nice. To Greg's original question about like Paul Thomas Anderson, like I give directors and anyone who's not like accustomed to being like a front facing sort of like talent like a lot of like leeway that they're not actors. Like Adrian Brody has no excuse. But like a director, especially one who like doesn't seem to sort of like crave like the spotlight in this particular way, like this award season has like, it's great to like win a bunch of awards, but it's also like it's a lot of pressure to deliver an interesting speech after interesting speech after interesting speech. So it was nice. It was nice, even though again it seemed sort of preordained. It was nice to see him, get his flowers. But as Jen said, it was also nice to feel in that room as if like there were definitely like this feeling of like there were two major talents who like emerged victorious that day, separate and apart from whatever the final tallies were.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think that's true. It was interesting. I was thinking about it as you were saying, he had to give so many of the speeches for one battle that like as he kept winning, and so there were only three. They both had 3 awards won by someone else for their movie, and like Sean Penn wasn't there. So like the one actor couldn't be like, and I really loved working with PTA and he's been so good to me, because like he wasn't there. So we didn't get to hear that. And yeah, there weren't as many people maybe to talk him up. The woman who won the casting award, I think said some funny things, and it almost felt like, it was an interesting reflection of like, this is probably what it's like to work on a PTA set. They say very sardonic things to each other about how like, well, when he calls, like all you can do is say yes and then throw your life away because you're just going to be working for a long time. Whereas the people working with Ryan Coogler are like, he's the warmest, gentlest spirit in the world, and he will hold you and just make you feel happy. And neither is necessarily better, but one of them plays better in the awards thing. But like, I only read afterwards, the casting lady was an intern on Hard 8, PTA's first movie, and has worked with him like through the years and worked up to having this big career in casting. And it works with him on, if not every movie, almost every one of his movies, and has just stayed in touch. And they've been working together for his entire career. And that's, I don't think she was prepared to actually win, because no one expected her to win going into the ceremony. So it felt like she was more maybe speaking off the cuff. But yeah, I wonder if maybe one or two of those stories from someone else would have made it feel more just like, yes, we're celebrating PTA as much as we're celebrating Ryan Coogler. But yeah, I thought he did a good job. He is kind of a mumbly, awkward guy, which, isn't that far. Like, I think Sean Baker is a little bit more polished at presenting it. But Sean Baker didn't have another director who was had won an award and won a few other things and had people praising him, who maybe is, inherently more charismatic and a better public speaker, despite his protestations when winning original screenplay in the way that Ryan Coogler was to PTA. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it did feel to me like they both got an equal amount of sort of shine for the night of like, these are two of our leaders, and we should feel great that they both made great movies this year. But maybe all of that is to say that's also my bias, because these are my 2 favorite movies. I love both of them. Like, I know I say this because I know I saw there's some people out there who really don't like Sinners. There's more people out there who really love Sinners, and by extension really don't like One Battle, and they are like, this guy sucked, this whole thing's bad. So I know there's folks out there who feel that way, but I personally don't. And so to Greg's point, it didn't feel like it was a letdown. It didn't feel like, they're never going to give him an award again because this was so weak. But it also didn't feel like, wow, Paul Thomas Anderson's got a speaking engagement schedule to set the lineup, because that's not really his thing.
I did like the family moment, and I liked seeing him with Maya. I missed some of the the ceremonies because of cable access, but I hadn't seen Maya Rudolph out with him that often, and they seem like a pretty private couple. And I think Jen said it right. He lets the work speak for their family life and the life they had. While you were all talking, I was just doing some Googling to kind of check in on this point, and I don't think it's fully there, but in my imagination, Paul Thomas Anderson is like one of the like mainstay Gen X filmmakers, right? And so he's 55, and to think about him as almost the last one of those guys, and sorry, it's mostly guys, but that's the way the industry is, that needed to get that award, right? And so he's 55. Nolan is 55. Tarantino must be a little older than that and has technically not got the director award, but has been, awarded along the way. And so it feels like, we need to talk a little bit about Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig. They probably are more Gen X than I'd separate them. I'd put Baumbach in my imagination in Gen X and Gerwig as a millennial. But Coogler and Chloe Zhao are elder millennials, right? Chloe Zhao is 43, and Coogler is 39, which just makes me feel so bad about all I've achieved in life. And so it does feel to me like the way Jen set it up is exactly right. This is like the passing of that kind of end of the Gen X cultural dominance and moving into kind of the millennial. And I think it was not clear to me before this year, but like Chloe Zhao and Ryan Coogler are really good friends. They came up through Sundance. They helped write each other's films. There's all these connections to it. So it does feel to me like we were kind of like, let's just hold, like they're coming, they're here. I know Chloe Zhao has already won, but like we'll get there in a while. The piece I can't make work in that is Sean Baker, who is also 55, which would put him in the Gen X, but like feels like he presents like almost Gen Z, right? Like he feels like he presents so young. I'm thinking particularly of Red Rocket with the NSYNC feels like he's a millennial culturally, at least. So, but I do think it's okay to wait for those other filmmakers to come around. And it would have been sad if PTA got a late in his career, hey, we liked The Departed almost as much as Goodfellas type Oscar. The fact that, to me, I've seen all his films. I understand some people may disagree with this. I think this is his best work. And so I'm really glad that this is a case where he's getting the award for at least one that is as deserving, if not most deserving, than the rest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I don't know if I think it's his best. I've been doing a slow rewatch, and it's hard because you finish one and you're like, oh, that's his best one, and then you watch the next one, you're like, oh no, wait a minute. But I don't think anyone is like, all due respect, if he had won for Licorice Pizza, I would have been like, oh, okay, that's the one they decided to give him the awards for. And this is not that. Like, I think this is easily in that conversation amongst his top 6 or 7, which doesn't sound like it's that much when he's only had 10 movies, but they're 10 really good movies. So that, it's very easy to believe anyone who would say this is his best movie. And I don't think it's weird that he got rewarded for this. And apologies to Greg for Jen and I just peppering him with directors' ages in the chat while you were talking. We were doing a lot of generational studying.
I got him mostly right?
You
Like
you were doing great.
Well done.
Yeah.
You did forget Wes Anderson. I just want to note that. You didn't put him in the conversation as a Gen X guy who still needs a non-short film win.
He exists outside of time, right? He's riding a penny farthing somewhere out on a gaslit street.
He's a different kind of ageless to Sean Baker. Like, Sean Baker's ageless because he knows like modern stuff, and Wes Anderson's ageless because I think he's weaving something somewhere.
He's never touched a cell phone. Yeah. So the other question I prepared for tonight maybe doesn't belong now, but Jen, you can edit it till later if you want. But here's my question. So I was playing Letterboxd games recently, and just like I picked up 3 or 4 movies and random things I saw, and the actress Imogen Poots was way high in my stats. And that's a really random actress to have seen a ton of her movies. So I was like, I got to lean into this. Like, what else is Imogen Poots in? And she was in the movie The Father with Anthony Hopkins. And I paused when I passed my eyes over that movie poster. And I was like, oh, yeah, that movie existed. Like, we spent a lot of time thinking about the father, and then we were all shocked that the father, like, wow. And I saw the father, and I haven't thought about the father in 5 years of the 6 years since that Oscar ceremony. And I think maybe Zoe Saldana taking the stage last night and being reminded that Emilia Perez existed was like another one of those. So my question for the group is, what is the movie we have thought so much about this year that we will simply never think of again? And it doesn't even have to be a nominee, technically. It could be. But like, which one is like, yeah, I sometimes that's Coda. I know when you pundit it up, you have to talk about Coda, but like, when was the last time any of you watched Coda, right?
I feel bad because I love the man who made it and I love a lot of people who are in it, but I think it's Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein because it's just sort of like, oh yeah, Guillermo del Toro made a Frankenstein. It won 3 Oscars. Like that's going to be like when I look back and remind myself Dick Tracy won 3 Oscars. I loved Dick Tracy when I was a kid, so that's no shade on Dick Tracy. But I think that's going to be one of those surprises where you're like, oh yeah, I guess that was a thing. That's my first reaction to your question. Is it's Frankenstein, but I'm sure there's a better movie that either didn't win or didn't even get a lot of nominations that will crumble away over time. But I'll say that to start.
I think when Kate Hudson finally wins an Oscar, people are going to look up what has she been nominated for and be like, Songs on Blue. What was that?
Neil, who?
Yeah. Huh? Like, this was a movie? So that was the first thing I thought of is Songs on Blue. But and also maybe Blue Moon. I don't know what I have against the word blue today, but like.
Also Avatar, also blue.
There you go. Anything with blue in it, we're gonna. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, like for me, it's always those like one-off nominees. Amy Madigan and Weapons being the exception, I think, but because it's been such a pop culture phenomenon. But like usually those like one-off are the ones to me that get forgotten over time.
I will say I don't know what time will do with this because this is maybe the very like opposite of true. But I kind of could foresee a future where everyone is like, you know what, you should only just watch the first Wicked movie, and over time it's like, oh, I guess there was a second Wicked movie, and like that is sort of like A, kind of forgotten, and B, it will be very shocking to the people who do watch it that it was not only in the conversation but was expected to get like 5+ Oscar nominations on nomination day, and also was like a presumed frontrunner in 2 or 3 categories, and it wasn't, and it just sort of disappeared.
I'm going to say this for a movie that I liked, and I know Jen liked too, because we were both like, we're not going to apologize for liking this movie, but I think F1. I had a close friend of mine was texting me before the Oscars, and he said that he was reading through anonymous ballots and that the anonymous ballot had F1 as the best picture pick, and he said he had to close his laptop and just walk into the sun because he was so upset. It was just like, what is this world that we live in? Again, I really like the movie. I'm fine with it in a slate of 10 for best picture, but there's no way that if this were anything less than 10 that this could have made the slate. And I think that we're going to have a racing movie within 2 years that we're just going to think of in this like category. And I don't know that F1 is really like the pinnacle of that genre.
I'm struck by all the streaming issues like that you're mentioning, right? Like Frankenstein and F1, it's like, yeah, because you can't put that on your shelf and add it to your collection, I think that is actually going to contribute in some ways. And maybe I'll add to that mix Train Dreams, a much beloved, kind of feels like that, we experienced it for this one award cycle and we might never possibly think about it again. And like, look, I want to be clear that my question is not actually really related to like the quality of the film. I would put Nomadland in this category. I guess I'm just memory holing 2020 all across the board. But like, has anybody watched Nomadland since it won Best Picture? Like, we probably all watched it one time and thought it was pretty good and never thought about it again. So like, so I do think it's interesting, it's sometimes shocking to me, like if I had to list the 10 from last year, how hard that is. Like, because we get so wrapped up in the race and all the ways we love, but we forget about it. So yeah. And I hope Sentimental Value sticks around. I think I have a soft spot for that one. I think it's getting a really nice Criterion release that will also help. And I don't think Joachim Trier is going anywhere. I just finally saw Oslo August 31st today for the first time, and that's an awesome movie. So like, yeah, what a talent.
I don't think I had realized that not only were Chloe Zhao and Ryan Coogler in the same cohort at the Sundance Labs, but that Joachim Trier was their mentor. Like he was the one who led the cohort of that year at Sundance. It's like, oh, no wonder they all get along. And the PTA is there. It's like, I was there like 15 years before you. And it's like, okay, grandpa, that's fine. But like,
Hall was to the left, like, right. One of those guys on campus.
Right. And then poor Josh Safdie, not appearing at these ceremonies in terms of both his presence on screen and his voice on recordings.
So
I'll be interested if Marty Supreme can overcome its snubs to like live on. I mean, it was such a cultural moment. A24 is still rolling out exclusive merch like every week, but it feels like this is a big blow to its legacy.
I mean, I think that just means that younger people are going to look back on this year and be like, they really messed that one up. You know what I mean? Like that's going to become the version of us that doing that to the past years where we're like, not at the level of like Green Book or something like that, obviously, because the movies that won were very well deserving, but like there might be a little bit of that of like people just misunderstood Marty Supreme or something like that. But I do want to use it as a segue to talk about Best Actor because first of all, what do you think happened to Timmy? We did talk about this a little bit on a couple previous episodes. I think probably our predictions episode, but now we have factual information that he lost, right? And is that just because Michael B. Jordan, as I think Greg said earlier, stepped up to the moment when he won the actor awards, or was there something else going on with, like, what are we now thinking in terms of the status of Timothée Chalamet?
My quick summary of the situation is it started to feel, and again, I don't know if this is how voters feel, but I think the narrative plays out across many, many months because we spend so much time thinking about this. And to the degree that it influences, it does sort of hit all at once when voting happens. But the narrative had kind of pivoted from it's his time to we have to do this. And it's just sort of like, we're like, all right, like it's just kind of locked in. Like he keeps being nominated. He's good. We got to give him an award. He's trying real hard out there. Look at him go. And people like kind of wanted an off ramp, and Michael B. Jordan provided it. Like Sinners and Michael B. Jordan were there to be like, come here and you can support me instead. And not that aggressively, but just the confluence of events between the success of the movie, the sort of cultural push of Sinners, the wave that was happening, the BAFTA incident, the SAG actor win, all of those things gave folks who were maybe starting to waver on the feeling that like, I have to do this. I have to support this guy, even though like all reports are he's being annoying out there in the world, which maybe are not fully fair. I don't know. He's kind of annoying, but also whatever. He's having fun. We're pro Chalamet on this podcast. But it was an off ramp they were looking for, and it was provided, and it was like, great, this makes sense, and enough people took it.
I will say I found like the part about the Oscars that I like the least is all like the politics about it and all of like the like hit pieces about stuff. I mean, like what he said about like ballet and opera was not great, right? Like I don't endorse that. But also, I don't know, he was in a conversation on a panel with Matthew McConaughey. So the likelihood that he said the dumbest thing on that on that day is pretty slim. So, I'm sorry.
Oscar winner, Matthew McConaughey, just to catch his straight.
Oscar winner.
Oscar winner for season 1 True Detective. Anyway, go ahead.
Dallas Buyers Club absolutely lands right in that category we were just talking about, right? Like that's a film that once existed. Yes.
So I love Timothée Chalamet. I love his performances. Even I have grown tired of like a lot of him, right? Like I read an article that was basically like it was too much. He's just like overexposed. It was just like in the course of like these past 2 years, between all the movies that he's done, between Dune, A Complete Unknown, and this, he's just been all over the place. And some people just found it unpleasant. One thing that I remember was that when you see the actors' faces when they lose at award shows, and when Michael B. Jordan won, I remember Ethan Hawke, the look of delight in his face. When Timothy Chalamet
100%.
won, I think at the Golden Globes, I remember everyone looked kind of mad, right? like they didn't hide the fact that they were like, oh, this guy, right? And so I don't know, right? Like, but I think that Timmy's team has some work to do in like the years to come, and Timmy himself is just going to have to grapple with like whatever. I mean, I think he's going to be fine. He's going to continue to do good work. Although I will say that he has like Dune Part 3 and then he has Wonka 2 coming up. And those are the only projects, right? Like that I saw on his IMDb page is like upcoming. I'll be very interested to see what comes after Wonka 2 because like he chooses good projects. And so I'm confident that we're going to see him again in this conversation. But to PT's prediction, off mic prediction about like when will we award Timmy? It might be a while. Like if he couldn't pull it off this year when it seemed like everything was sort of aligning, right? I don't know how much of it was him sort of fumbling it because of these like gaffes or whatever, and how much of it was just like maybe they just didn't love Marty Supreme as much as we thought, or they respected it more than they loved it and didn't like the character that much because he's an unlikable character, right? I was sad because I was hoping that if he did win, he could take the moment to sort of like reclaim, like to be humble, to say something, to like make us remember why we liked him in the first place. And instead, I think it was just a lot of people being like, sit down, Timmy, stay there with what's her name, Kendall. And I don't love that. I don't love that part of it, right? I don't know. What do you all think?
So I PT pointed out until you corrected the record that you did erase Wonka from your timeline, and I think if you add Wonka back in and the first Dune, then you can really get back to Little Women. And so, what was coming to mind is I had not seen any of the things I should have seen with Timmy and them and before Little Women. So when I saw Little Women for the first time, my wife and I were watching it in the theater, and there's that moment, I think they're in Europe, and it pans across a party, and he's like draped in a chair. And like, I remembered that moment because both of us were like, that guy's compelling. That guy's kind of a dick, right? Like you could just see it all there. And I think the narrative Antonio just presented kind of balances out those two sides. Like there's a way in which he's always like held that together that you're like, and that's core to the Paul Atreides character. And PT has already called that all of this is just method acting for the Dune Part 3. And so, I was struck. I logged onto Instagram this morning. First, algorithm fed post I see is Timothy Chalamet already giving the first image of Paul Atreides in Dune 3. And it's like, oh, it just never ends. And it is absolutely like what culture demands of him. We demand he becomes this new type of celebrity, and then we shun him for being this new type of celebrity. Like, yeah, you have to go on all the college football podcasts, but then get off the college football podcast, right? Like, we don't want to see you all the time. And so I do think he's in a really tough spot. And I said this, I think, to you all, but also at a couple parties I was at over the last couple weeks. I thought if he had won and he owned the moment and said something really stirring, he really could have cemented himself as a celebrity forever. I'm not sure he would have taken that chance, right? Like, yeah. I think he might have just talked about being the greatest again or tributed, Josh Safdie. So I do think this is now going to be like, I'm not the historian on the podcast, PT, but I would say this is an Al Pacino thing, right? Like, it's going to be a long time until he gets something, and it'll be something not nearly as kind of center focused probably as Marty Supreme. Jen, do you regret that Wheaties box hanging over your shoulder?
It hasn't aged well, I'll tell you that. Well, or except with students,
just the
like
cereal.
the students that I have Zoom calls with, they see it behind me and they're like, "Is that a Marty Supreme box?" Like they're like, "You, my old professor, have seen Marty Supreme?" Anyway, the way I like to think about it is we have not finished Marty Supreme's story in Timothy Chalamet's career. We are at the "you have no power here" moment of the movie, where the Academy and old Hollywood has like we just said like, please sit down. You are a child. Like, and take a moment, take a moment to and Greg points out in the chat, and he got beat by a vampire. That's perfect. Yes. See, thank you, Greg. The metaphor is working. I like it. I love it. Thank you. And I do think, like, let's not forget that Marty Supreme, spoiler for Marty Supreme, I guess, but fast forward 30 seconds if you haven't seen Marty Supreme. But Marty Supreme ends with him not compromising his ideals and winning, right? And he collapses in a heap and starts crying because he's like, I did it. Even though everything around him is conspiring against him to be like, you have no power, right? So I do think we have, I'd like to think of this moment as what is a necessary step in the formation of what Timothy Chalamet will become, and not just and how his talent will kind of crystallize and turn into a diamond of some kind, right? So that's me being kind of more optimistic, because I do want him to do well, but I do want to say that, like, the kind of problem that his campaign and kind of how people now feel about him and how all this shook out is now bringing up is that he method acted as Marty Supreme and kind of leaned into the Marty Supreme ethos as a way to market the movie, and that worked. The movie made over $100 million. And yet he can't have both. Like, he can't, because I think the best assessment of what went wrong with his campaign this year is from Ann Thompson of IndieWire. She said the authenticity is the key word. That his campaign, because he did flip this switch, and whether that was intentional the whole time or whether that was reactive to how people were responding, we will never know, really, or maybe we won't know until much later. But it does really seem like him grandstanding and be like, I want to be one of the greats, right? And like really channeling Marty Supreme, and then switching once it became the movie came out, and once it became award season, and he started being like humble. I want to thank my partner. You're my foundation, right? Like, and then he turns it off. That switch, more than being one or the other, is what turned people off from him, to be like, wait, I don't actually know who this guy has been just faking it the whole time, one way or the other. Like, what is going on? I don't know who Timothy Chalamet is now, right? I don't know he's coming across as like phony and not authentic. So, and I think that creates a big question for the movie industry, because like clearly what he did to market the movie was successful. And so, and both cannot be true, right? He cannot be a Oscar contender and be the Gen Z, like, let's sell overpriced jackets kind of mark. You know what I mean? Like he can't be both at once. And I think that raises a lot of interesting questions about the future of the movie business.
I think that's a good point. And I think especially that, like, this maybe is Oscar pundit brain, which we all succumb to from time to time, that it was like, well, he was campaigning. He started his campaign by being still sort of following on from last year's SAG in the Marty role. But like, that wasn't the campaign. That was the advertising for the movie. Like, that was go see the movie. And that
we
worked
just didn't know
really well, because I mean, they're obviously intertwined, but I don't know if he thought necessarily. Maybe he was just like, it's all going to work out. Everything's going to be great. But I think his top priority in December, when he was like still going out being arrogant and brash, et cetera, was, I need to have this movie make money. If this movie makes money, it will get Marty Supreme into the conversation. And it did. It got it 9 nominations. It didn't keep it in the conversation because it didn't win any of those 9 nominations. But that's okay. Josh Safdie wants to be Marty Scorsese. Marty Scorsese has had 3 movies that got 10 nominations and didn't win anything. And that's fine. Martin Scorsese is A-okay in his life. So, it's okay. But I wonder if that shift was less like him being disingenuous or course correcting so much as leaving marketing the movie and entering campaigning. And maybe part of the lesson is just that's not different. That's not the same thing. I mean, it is the same thing. You have to whatever you do all along the way, which sounds exhausting and also sounds miserable. And maybe next time he'll just be in Ukraine the whole time and not actually do all the campaigning and be like, whatever.
He's going to start smoking and smelting Oscars. Like that's
yes.
other people's Oscars, I guess.
I was looking around for proof that Sean Penn had done that. And I don't, what happened, what I did read is Sean Penn gave one of his 2 Oscars, 2 previous Oscars to Zelensky in Ukraine and said, don't give this back to me until the war's over and you've won. So I don't know if the smelting has actually happened officially, for the record. That is a Sean Fennessy repeated line. But yeah, to Greg mentioned it. I will just reiterate I have started thinking of like Al Pacino in the 70s getting double the nominations that Timothy has gotten in the last 10 years. But he got a bunch and he started not showing up for the Oscars and he started, being a little bit thought of as like abrasive and difficult. And then for the 80s, he didn't get any nominations. Then suddenly it was like, oh my God, let's get Al Pacino an Oscar. And he got a few nominations. And then one for Scent of a Woman, which is a movie I don't think a lot of people think is his best movie. Similar, I was thinking of this as well, that like kind of Paul Newman, which had a similar, like he's the actor of our generation. He gets 4 Best Actor nominations in a decade from the late 50s through the late 60s. And then nothing through the 70s. Suddenly in the early 80s, it's like, let's give him noms, and he doesn't win. They finally give him an honorary Oscar, and then he wins the next year after the honorary Oscar. So maybe for Color of Money. So maybe that's the path. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what is the movie in the late 2030s, around 2040, when Timothée Chalamet finally wins. And will it be any good? Or will it be something where we're like,
I like that authenticity question, and I do think there's something about the movies he came up with as like the soft boy in like Call Me by Your Name and in Lady Bird, right? And it's like that's who we imagine him as, and then he chameleoned into Bob Dylan, but now it's like, oh wait, yeah, maybe he was never that guy. Maybe that's the fake guy, and he's not the one who sweetly listens to alt rock with Saoirse Ronan. He's off with a Kardashian, right? Like, I think that is a problem. I'll offer to close the conversation on Timmy by just switching back to Michael B. Jordan. And I felt so good about this win. And then the other social media, not to steal Jen's beat by being social media correspondent, but the other social media thing I was served today was HBO put together a nice little tribute that says, like, it just happens to be convenient that Sinners is on HBO, but it cut together scenes of Michael B. Jordan on The Wire as a little guy and scenes from Sinners. And it said something, I'm not going to remember the exact word, but it was like, we've been here the whole 25 years. We can't wait for the next 25 or something like that. It was really perfect. And I do think the good feelings finally came around to what we say often is that we start to take somebody like a Michael B. Jordan for granted. And, he is so familiar. I know Friday Night Lights looms large in a lot of our minds, and all the films he's done with Coogler. It's like wonderful that he really earned this and it felt so good. The final thing I saw on social media today is somebody had the right angle to show that the last thing he did is give a point to Jesse Plemons and tap his chest, right? So like, I think it's just a good case of somebody well-liked in the industry, who just seems like a good dude. And I do think in light of this whole conversation, it's like, yeah, he's just been there being a good dude, like just doing the work and being, I think we all had questions about Creed 3, but saw the talent there. I can't wait for his Thomas Crown affair. So it made me so happy. So what a great moment.
My favorite reaction shot of his was when Huntrix was performing, and they cut to him and he has this very serious look on his face and he's just bobbing his head to the music. And I was like, he loves anime. I bet he loves K-pop Demon Hunters. You know what I mean? Like he is often cited as like an anime lover and says Dragon Ball Z is his favorite show ever. and it just makes, I'm like, oh, I love him. He's so great. All right. Does anyone want to shout out anything that they love from this in terms of winners, speeches, anything you want to mention and give a shout out to that we haven't covered yet?
I will just note, we sort of, I think we referenced it in passing earlier. Great job by Kumail Nanjiani, not just having a funny little bit when he introed it, but also managing the tie. That was incredible. So I want to reiterate that. And I also want to say just some generally strong speech. I don't remember any speech where it was like, though this is going on too long or this is boring or whatever, they're bland. I think everyone gave really good speeches. The winners for both the feature length and short documentaries, I thought particularly sort of spoke to the moment and sort of had, I think, really inspirational things to say, regardless of the quality of the feature length documentary, per the one person here who's watched all of them. So I want to shout them out.
The documentary folks were rowdy like all night long. I don't know what was the free bar up next to them or like, but I liked Jimmy Kimmel's rejoinder of like, they're not going to give you as many tickets next year. Like look out. So yeah, I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about. I will just throw one more time in there. I'm really glad Sentimental Value came back just a little bit at the end. I think it fell far short of what I needed it to do to take Hasib in the Vulture movie league. So I will assume that we can doff our caps to him and that he took the LTR pod subgroup on that. But I do like that there was a moment where I think it was at the shortlist where like maybe it's Sirat and maybe it's Secret Agent and so on. And again, all great movies. It was a great year for international feature. I thought that was the best of the 5, and I'm really glad that won.
Just to speak, real briefly, a little more my history stuff. Ludwig Göransson, 3 Oscars. He's very young. It's very unnerving. I don't want to get into whether any of us could have taught him at USC, but I believe we could have because they were class of like 2013, I think. So that's tough for us. But 3 wins in not a lot of years. He has equaled John Williams in that stretch. We mentioned this before in the prediction episode between Jaws and E.T. It's the same amount of time between Black Panther and Sinners to have won 3 Oscars. Huge for him. And Sean Penn joins the very elite group of people who have 3 acting Oscars. So that's very interesting. I mean, he can turn in very good performances, and I think is clearly very respected when he locks in and gives great performances. The Academy does really love it, and I would now question, like when we Oscar Ferry, maybe this ends up being just me and Antonio someday. I would definitely take away 1, if not 2, of his earlier Oscars now, because I think this is a great win for him. This was a wonderful performance, and I think better than both of his previous ones. But he's up there with Jack Nicholson and Daniel Day-Lewis,
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep, yes. Sorry, I was being very gendered and just thinking about male performers. But yeah, Ingrid Bergman, Katharine Hepburn, etc. Does he belong in that group? I don't know, but he's there, so good for him.
All right, I think we're coming to a close. Greg, you've been very busy on the airwaves recently. What? Tell us what you've been up to. What do you want to plug?
Oh, I've been on LTR Pod 5 hours every Monday night of recent memory. Hey, again, we said sentimental things last time, so I will just say again, it's been a great year and a great Oscar season. I hope that our listeners have enjoyed our coverage and that I often get reminded that, our episodes are evergreen in that if you just, sit down and finally do watch Train Dreams. Oh, wait, we didn't cover that one. If you sit down and you finally do watch Frankenstein, you can go back and find our episode. Or if you want to see how we reacted to Sinners in the moment last April, you can check out those episodes. So please do that. Other than that, I am appearing somewhat regularly on the Rebel Base Card podcast. We are supposedly still talking about Andor, although now there's like a new Star Wars show starting up that I have to pretend I care about. And then there's a Star Wars movie coming out, and there's going to be a lot of coverage of that to come. I also recently guested on Force Ghost Conversations talking about a Star Wars book, as I recall. And then the Wheel of Time podcast continues to churn away. We are deep into, I think, book 8. It will end someday, I think. I'm not sure, but supposedly it will. So, and if people want to find me on Letterboxd or Instagram, I'm at IonCanon, EYEONCANON. Hey, my birthday present to myself was to buy some Criterion for a month or two. So, people should DM me their Criterion channel recommendations. What do I need to catch that I might miss on there? Battle of Algiers is high on the list because that's how I'll celebrate one battle winning. So that's enough from me. Antonio, say something much shorter about where people can find you. And I know there's only one place because Jen says it all the time.
There's only one place, but today I'm doing this now. This was a mistake. I should have said this earlier. Jen is the only one who knows. Today's my last time as a regular co-host of the Long Take Review. So I've got a few things that I want to say before just the last time as a regular co-host. So let me just give you a moment here. As longtime listeners know, this all started like 3 years ago when I approached Jen on a shuttle we both take from USC to Union Station. And I floated the idea of like an Oscar will win, should win. And Jen had the idea to record our conversation as a podcast instead. And I did not like it. I was so nervous and so reluctant, but I trusted Jen because I'd never regretted a moment of her company, and so we gave it a shot. And I could never have imagined what grew from that decision. These conversations that I've always looked forward to, all the excellent movies that we saw together and the terrible ones as well. But more than anything, what this show has brought me are just 3 really great friendships that have played such a huge part in my life like these past years. I've always been like the least natural at this. You 3 can come here like cold and have just like the most electric conversation, and it's always so impressive. And I have to prepare and take lots of notes. But you carried me along anyway, and I couldn't have asked for 3 better people to really do this with. Like, you nod when my points aren't that good, and you laugh when my jokes aren't that funny, and you've made this place just really always feel safe and fun. In middle age, it's really easy to feel like you're set on friends, but like Greg, like I've really loved getting to know you and getting to share this space with you. It's like the weirdest way to like build a friendship. But
true.
I always look forward to like your astute takes and appreciated your commitment to the Jen hates the Irish stick, and respected you just lending some like discipline and structure to our sometimes freewheeling talks. We only met in person like one time at a conference in Baltimore, but that trip was worth it for that meeting alone. And I very much look forward to seeing you when you come to LA next year. PT, we were friends before the Long Take Review, but the show and our conversations on and around it took that friendship and conversation to like a whole different level. There are just few people in my life who I can talk serious Oscar history with, and I love geeking out with you on this stuff. I love seeing movies with you, whether they're old or new or good or bad. You're just the best company, and you make every conversation you're in funnier and worth every minute, and I love you like a brother. And Jen, everything about this podcast flows from you, your goodness and enthusiasm, your warmth and your wit. You are the sun in our little solar system. Whenever I had to drop out of an episode last minute, when I took months to like figure out my stupid audio problems, you never said an unkind word or made me feel worse than I already felt. Like the consummate hostess you are, you always treated me and everyone who's been in here with like generosity and respect. And you made me a legal writing professor who's always hated the sound of his own voice, the unlikeliest podcaster in the world. For 3 years, I showed up here because I just wanted to hang out with you 3 and talk about one of my favorite art forms. But 3 years is a long time. And while I love watching movies, I just can't keep pace with you anymore. And that's just not fair to like you, my wonderful, wonderful co-host. I was raised to believe that it's better to like leave a party early than to overstay one's welcome. And I think now is just like a good time to go. I want to read more. I want to write more. I want to spend Monday evenings having dinner with my family. I owe my wife and kids like a debt of gratitude for like always graciously seating me for our recording times, including today. I want to sincerely and ardently thank our listeners too. Like during COVID, I had a student named Taylor, and we met for the first time in person um, like a couple months ago. And she said that it was through this show that she felt reconnected to me after so many years out of contact. And she recommended it to her friends. And so for all the former students and like old friends who tuned in, really thank you. And for all the new friends I made through this, including Sarah and Hasib, thank you too. It's really been a blast. I won't be going away forever. I actually have something to plug. I'll still be back to like guest host on occasion. Next month, I'll be a panelist on the Levan Institute series on writing, and then a panelist on USC's Open Dialogue project on student mentoring in a polarized world. So there are other venues where I'll be chatting. But I will always look forward to all the ways the Long Take Review will evolve and continue to grow, as I know it will. I'm so proud to have been a part of it. When people think about like legacy, about the things that they'll leave behind, they often think in terms of like accomplishments and awards. But one day, if my kids ever want to hear their dad just being like happy with his friends, this is the archive they should tap. So thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart, Greg, PT, Jen, all our listeners. I will miss being a regular part of this, but I'll always be your friend and your fan, no matter what. So that's it.
Aw, that got me more choked up than anything on the Oscars. Like,
I know. You passed the Rob Reiner thing.
Well, that's a different emotion.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It will miss you, and don't think we're not going to try to like rope you back in more frequently than you think.
Yeah.
If not only just because I'm already thinking about like, well, now we don't have the Oscars. We could start do a couple more Oscar Fairy flashbacks. And if Antonio's not there for that, what are we doing? He's got the most opinions on those. So that's awesome.
I'll be back for those.
Yeah, good. You could follow the show on Letterboxd at LTR Pod.
Wait.
No.
I was just gonna say that I said this to Antonio already, but like the door is always open whenever you want to come back. We're gonna keep your seat warm with no pressure, despite what PT just said. No pressure for you to come back unless you want to. But if there's something that if there's like what PT would call an Antonio movie that we're not talking about, and you need to whip us into shape as you always do, you're always welcome to come back. And it's been amazing having you on. I am actually astounded that you've made that you lasted this long with us. I mean that in the best possible way, because I know how accomplished you are and how busy you are and how much you have going on. But I feel like every time you've been on the show, you've made us better. You've like elevated and lightened our conversation. You're still to this day the best person I know who can describe movies that they've seen. Like it's just like, and you always come incredibly prepared and make me feel like I don't know what I'm talking about. So thank you for that. And yeah, we'll definitely miss you. But PT,
I'm just really sad there really is only one place to find him now. I didn't know when I threw it on that, and now you can only get him on Letterboxd.
On Letterboxd, yeah. PT,
there's no pressure, but we will lure you back. I'm sorry, Jen. I talked over your thing again.
I'll be back for
yeah, cut all this out. But I mean, yeah, just to say that. Okay, sorry, Jen. Go ahead.
No, I'm throwing it to you.
Oh,
I
great.
don't know what you thought I was going to say.
Well, okay.
Take us out.
If you would like to follow the show, despite the fact that Antonio will not be around as often as he has in the past, if you still want to listen to the show, which, that would be nice, but we understand if you were mostly here for Antonio, please follow us wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening right now, add, plus subscribe, look for us on social media, look for us on Letterboxd, all that good stuff. Yes, Antonio, you will be missed, but not for too long, because again, we look forward to when you will return triumphantly as the most welcome guest on the show. Jen, where can folks find you?
People can find me frantically trying to read Project Hail Mary before the movie comes out. That was just my way of being like, PT, tell them that we're probably going to do Project Hail Mary next, because it is coming out super soon. But yeah, people can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI. In particular, I've been kind of quiet on social media in general. I became the social media manager for our school's, my kids' school's PTA. And so not Paul Thomas Anderson, Parent Teacher Association. And so please don't confuse the two. And because of that, I don't post that often anymore on my personal accounts. But when it's Oscar season, when it rains, it pours. So you can see I just posted a reel of all of the snacks that I made for the party that we were talking about that I had at my house. And as well as the decorations and all good stuff. So you can go check that out there. You can also find me on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jinn. What's a good way to how did oh no. I was gonna say, how did Conan close the show? And then I realized it got real dark.
Yeah, well, he did a shout out to Martin Short first, and which is also dark in its own way, but very nice and compassionate, but also sad.
Wait, what happened with Martin Short?
His daughter just died.
After
his wife died a few years ago. So
it's been rough.
Not doing great now.
I liked the Conan ending because it was a funny parody, but also Conan and Jim Downey worked together at SNL forever. That was like his mentor who he learned comedy from. So that was really wonderful.
He was a Joachim Trier to his Ryan Coogler.
At the risk of prolonging this more, do you think that, because Antonio and I were speculating about this, do you feel like they were always going to end with that, even if one battle hadn't won? Or is there some like secret cutting room floor where there's another ending to the show, depending on if Sinners won?
I think because of Jim Downey, that's the one they were going to go with. I wonder if they just wouldn't have shown something at the end without it. I don't think they did one for like all 10 or even like, Sinners, and then, I don't know, maybe hemmed it. If you're like, what if Sentiment of Value wins? Like, I don't think they did that. It was either maybe a one battle themed one and then a neutral one, or they were going to do the one battle thing or nothing, because I think it's mostly a Conan Downey thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one battle was not in the opening, whereas Sinners was.
No, he was in the car with Benicio del Toro.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. But they really leaned into the Conan is Irish, which must have really worked for Jen.
Oh, that's a good conclusion. Jen did a really good job of issuing a strong edict to us with like, I'm not going to do an outline, I'm not going to do a document, just one thing. We can never mention Jesse Buckley for the entire duration of the show. Boom.
Wow. Your nameplate says. I was going to say long take review host for life. Thanks. Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You'll also receive occasional written reviews of new Star Wars and Marvel.